Welcome to an in-depth exploration of the new space race between BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, and the Western space powers like the USA, Europe and Japan. In this video, we delve into how BRICS is challenging the established dominance of Western space programs and the key areas of competition, such as satellite technology, Mars exploration, space stations, and space resource mining. Discover how space is becoming the latest geopolitical arena, with powerful countries competing for scientific breakthroughs, economic growth, and military dominance in space. We'll explore critical questions like, will the future of space be defined by collaboration or competition? What are the opportunities and challenges for global scientific cooperation? And how is the weaponization of space changing international relations? In this video, we'll describe an introduction to the new space race, the historical context comparing the Cold War to the 21st century space race, BRICS space ambitions featuring China, India, Russia, and more, the leadership of Western space powers like the USA, Europe, and Japan, key areas of competition including technology, exploration, and resources, space militarization with anti-satellite weapons and space forces, global collaboration in space through science and diplomacy, and the future of space governance, whether it will lean towards multilateralism or division. Join us for a comprehensive look at how nations are shaping the future of space exploration and the far-reaching consequences of this 21st century space race. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest in space exploration and global scientific collaboration. Let's start exploring today's topic. The modern world is witnessing the resurgence of a space race. This time, however, the competition is not solely between two superpowers, as it was during the Cold War era between the United States and the Soviet Union. Today, a new rivalry is emerging between BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and the Western space powers, primarily the United States, Europe, and allied nations. This 21st century space race is more complex and nuanced, driven not just by the ambition to explore space, but also by the desire for global scientific collaboration, geopolitical influence, and economic leadership in space technology. The BRICS nations, each with unique strengths in space science and technology, are positioning themselves as serious contenders in the global space race. In contrast, the Western space powers, led by the United States and Europe, continue to be dominant forces with decades of experience and well-established space programs. At the heart of this rivalry is not just the race for space dominance, but the push for cooperation or competition over the global commons of space resources, space exploration, and the scientific advancements that come from space research. In this comprehensive exploration of the new space race, we will delve into the following aspects: historical context from the Cold War to a multilateral space race, the BRICS nations, and a breakdown of each nation's space ambitions, Western space powers, established dominance and new challenges, key areas of space competition, including technological innovation, exploration, and space economics, global scientific collaboration with its opportunities and obstacles, geopolitical implications with space as the new frontier for diplomacy and power, and the future of space governance, whether it will be multilateralism or a divided cosmos. Historical context: from the Cold War to a multilateral space race. The origins of space exploration are deeply rooted in the Cold War, where the race to space became a symbol of technological superiority and ideological dominance. The United States and the Soviet Union competed fiercely, culminating in landmark achievements such as the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik in 1957 and the United States landing on the moon in 1969. This competition spurred massive investments in space technology, and by the 1980s, the world had witnessed the birth of global space agencies like NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and the Soviet space program, which later evolved into Russia's Roscosmos. The end of the Cold War saw a shift from direct competition to collaboration, notably with the creation of the International Space Station, or ISS. a joint effort between NASA, Roscosmos, the European Space Agency or ESA, and other international partners. This collaborative spirit continues to this day, but is now facing challenges as new spacefaring nations, particularly in Asia and the developing world, are emerging with their own agendas. The rise of private space companies such as SpaceX has also changed the landscape, adding a commercial dimension to space exploration that did not exist during the Cold War. The BRICS nations represent a new bloc in this evolving landscape. While Russia, a former Cold War player, continues to assert itself in space, China and India have emerged as formidable space powers. Brazil and South Africa, though relatively new to space, are building their capabilities with an eye toward advancing national interests and regional leadership. This shift from a bipolar to a multilateral space race adds complexity to the dynamics of global space collaboration and competition. The BRICS nations, a breakdown of each nation's space ambitions. Russia legacy and continuity. As a successor to the Soviet Union, Russia has maintained an active and ambitious space program. The Russian Federal Space Agency, or Roscosmos, is one of the oldest space organizations and has historically played a pivotal role in space exploration. Russia continues to be a key player in human spaceflight, with its Soyuz spacecraft being one of the most reliable vehicles for transporting astronauts to the ISS. Russia's space ambitions are far-reaching, including plans for lunar exploration, Mars missions, and the development of new space stations. However, economic sanctions and political isolation from the West have pushed Russia to seek deeper collaboration with China and other BRICS nations. China, the rising space power. China's space program, led by the China National Space Administration, or CNSA, has made remarkable progress in the last 2 decades. China's achievements include landing a rover on the moon, Chang'e 4, and successfully deploying a Mars rover, Tianwen-1. Its Tiangong space station, launched in 2021, marks China's entry into the exclusive club of nations with independent space stations. China's space ambitions are driven by a strategic vision to become a global leader in space technology, emphasizing self-reliance and avoiding dependence on Western systems. The Belt and Road Initiative's Space Silk Road exemplifies China's intent to expand its space partnerships, particularly with developing nations. India Affordable Excellence. India, through its Indian Space Research Organization, or ISRO, has earned a reputation for cost-effective and highly successful space missions. ISRO's Mars Orbiter mission, Mangalyaan, which reached Mars on its first attempt with an exceptionally low budget, showcased India's growing prowess in space exploration. India's space agenda includes lunar exploration with its Chandrayaan missions and plans for human spaceflight under the Gaganyaan project. India also has significant capabilities in satellite launches, making it a key player in the commercial satellite launch market. India's focus on affordability and innovation makes it a competitive force in the global space industry. Brazil, a regional space leader. Brazil's space program, while less advanced than its BRICS counterparts, is focused on building capabilities in satellite technology, space research, and launch services. The Brazilian Space Agency, or AEB, has ambitious plans to enhance its satellite manufacturing and launching capacities, primarily through its Alcântara Launch Center, which offers an advantageous location near the equator for launching satellites. Brazil's space efforts are closely tied to regional leadership in Latin America, and it seeks to partner with other BRICS nations to bolster its space capabilities. Environmental monitoring and agricultural development are key focuses of Brazil's space agenda. South Africa, building capacity. South Africa's space program is relatively young but growing. The South African National Space Agency, or SANSA, is working to develop expertise in Earth observation, satellite navigation, and space science. South Africa's geographic location makes it an ideal partner for ground-based space observation and tracking. As the only African nation in BRICS, South Africa has a unique role in promoting space development across the African continent. SANSA's focus is largely on using space technology for socio-economic development, including disaster management, environmental monitoring, and telecommunications. Western space powers, established dominance and new challenges. The United States remains the world's leading space power, with NASA at the forefront of global space exploration efforts. NASA's successes range from the Apollo moon landings to the Mars rovers and the Hubble Space Telescope. The United States also benefits from a robust private space sector, with companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Boeing playing major roles in space exploration and commercialization. The Artemis program, which aims to return humans to the moon by 2024 and eventually send astronauts to Mars, is one of NASA's most ambitious projects. The United States is also a key partner in the International Space Station and other international space collaborations. The European Space Agency, or ESA, is a major player in global space exploration, with significant contributions to Earth observation, satellite navigation, and space science. ESA has developed key space technologies, such as the Ariane launch vehicles, and has been a partner in many international space missions, including the International Space Station. European space efforts are characterized by strong cooperation among its member states and partnerships with NASA, Roscosmos, and other space agencies. ESA's future plans include participation in lunar exploration through the Artemis program and the development of its own space exploration missions. Japan's space program, led by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, is known for its innovative and precise space missions. JAXA has successfully landed rovers on asteroids and returned samples to Earth, demonstrating its expertise in deep space exploration. Japan is also involved in the International Space Station and collaborates with NASA and other space agencies. JAXA's future goals include lunar exploration and contributing to the Artemis program. Canada and Australia are also notable contributors to Western space efforts. Canada's space program, led by the Canadian Space Agency, or CSA, is known for its robotics expertise, particularly its development of the Canadarm for the International Space Station. Australia is building its space capabilities, focusing on satellite technology, Earth observation, and space communications. Key areas of space competition: technological innovation, exploration, and space economics. The new space race between BRICS and Western space powers spans several key areas of competition, each with its own strategic implications. Human spaceflight remains a key marker of national prestige in space exploration. While the United States and Russia have long histories in this area, China is quickly catching up with its Tiangong space station and ambitious plans for lunar exploration. NASA's Artemis program aims to return astronauts to the moon, while China and Russia have announced plans for a joint lunar base by the 2030s. Mars is the next frontier in planetary exploration. NASA's Perseverance rover and China's Tianwen-1 are currently exploring the Martian surface. India is also planning future Mars missions, while Russia has expressed interest in sending humans to the Red Planet. The race to Mars is not just about scientific discovery, but also about the potential for human colonization, resource extraction, and asserting geopolitical influence on another planet. As more nations and private entities aim for Mars, the planet may become the focal point of a new form of international competition. Satellites play a crucial role in modern life, from GPS navigation to weather forecasting, global communications, and military reconnaissance. In this arena, competition is fierce as both BRICS nations and Western powers strive to dominate satellite technology. The United States has historically led the world in satellite development, with an expansive network of military, communication, and observation satellites. However, China is rapidly building its own satellite infrastructure, including the Beidou navigation satellite system, which serves as an alternative to the US-led GPS system. India is also a significant player in satellite technology, offering cost-effective launch services that have attracted global customers. Its Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, or PSLV, is particularly well regarded for launching satellites into orbit at a fraction of the cost compared to Western alternatives. Brazil and South Africa are still developing their capabilities, but both nations are focusing on satellite technology to enhance national security, improve communication infrastructure, and advance scientific research. The competition in satellite technology extends beyond Earth observation and communications. It also includes the burgeoning field of satellite internet. Projects like SpaceX's Starlink and China's Guowang constellation are aiming to provide global internet coverage using vast networks of low Earth orbit satellites. The ability to control global internet access through space-based networks is seen as a strategic asset, adding another dimension to the space race. The construction and operation of space stations are another key area of competition. The International Space Station, a collaborative effort between the United States, Russia, Europe, Japan, and Canada, has been a symbol of global scientific cooperation for over 2 decades. However, with the ISS expected to retire in the 2030s, the future of space station-based research is in flux. China has already begun building its own space station, Tiangong, with plans to expand it into a major hub for space science and international collaboration. China has invited other nations, particularly developing countries, to conduct experiments on Tiangong, positioning itself as a leader in inclusive space research. Russia, having been a key partner in the ISS, has also announced plans to build its own space station in response to strained relations with Western powers. Space stations represent more than scientific research. They serve as platforms for future deep space missions, including lunar and Martian exploration. The race to establish independent space stations is thus tied to broader ambitions of human space exploration, and both BRICS and Western nations are vying for leadership in this domain. The concept of space mining, particularly on the moon and asteroids, is gaining traction as the next major frontier in space exploration. Both BRICS and Western space powers recognize the potential value of mining rare materials such as helium-3 on the moon, which could be used for nuclear fusion, or water ice that could support human colonies and be converted into rocket fuel. The race to exploit these extraterrestrial resources is not only a scientific challenge but also a geopolitical one, as whoever controls these resources could potentially dominate future space-based economies. NASA's Artemis Accords, signed by several nations, aim to establish international rules for lunar resource extraction, but countries like China and Russia have not joined. Instead, China and Russia are pursuing their own lunar missions with the explicit goal of resource extraction, while India and other BRICS nations are also exploring the potential for space mining. The competition for space resources raises significant questions about space law and governance. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which prohibits the ownership of celestial bodies, does not fully address modern commercial space activities. As countries and companies begin to extract resources from the moon and asteroids, the legal frameworks governing space may need to be re-examined, further complicating international relations in space. Private companies are playing an increasingly important role in the space race, particularly in the West. US companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and Boeing are leading the charge in commercial space exploration, providing launch services, developing spacecraft, and working on ambitious projects like lunar tourism and Mars colonization. SpaceX's reusable rockets have revolutionized the industry by dramatically reducing the cost of space access, while its Starship spacecraft is poised to play a central role in NASA's Artemis program. China, too, is developing a commercial space sector, with several private companies working alongside the government to build rockets, satellites, and other space technologies. China's commercial space industry, while still heavily state-controlled, is growing rapidly, and the country is encouraging private investment in space technology as part of its broader economic strategy. India's space program, though government-led, has also opened up to private participation, with the Indian government promoting private sector investment in satellite manufacturing and launch services. In contrast, Brazil and South Africa are still in the early stages of building commercial space industries. However, both nations recognize the economic potential of space and are working to attract investment and build partnerships with international space companies. Global scientific collaboration in space presents both opportunities and obstacles. While the competition between BRICS and Western space powers is intensifying, there's also significant potential for collaboration in space science. Space exploration is inherently expensive and technically challenging, and many countries have realized that international cooperation can accelerate scientific discovery and reduce costs. One of the most successful examples of international collaboration in space science is the International Space Station, or ISS. For over 2 decades, the ISS has served as a platform for scientific research conducted by astronauts from various countries. Although the United States and Russia are the primary partners, European, Japanese, and Canadian astronauts have also contributed significantly to the ISS's scientific output. Research conducted on the ISS has led to advances in fields such as biology, physics, and earth sciences. China is also positioning itself as a leader in global space collaboration. The Tiangong space station, China's counterpart to the ISS, is designed to host international experiments, and China has invited countries from around the world to participate. This is particularly appealing to nations that are not part of the ISS consortium, as Tiangong offers them a chance to engage in space research that would otherwise be out of reach. China's efforts to create an inclusive platform for space research could help it build soft power and foster scientific collaboration with developing nations. The European Space Agency, or ESA, has long been a champion of international cooperation in space. ESA's missions often involve partnerships with NASA, Roscosmos, and JAXA, allowing for the pooling of resources and expertise. European scientists have contributed to missions such as the Hubble Space Telescope, the Mars rovers, and the James Webb Space Telescope, showcasing the benefits of global collaboration in advancing scientific knowledge. Despite the potential for scientific collaboration, geopolitical tensions between BRICS and Western nations often hinder joint space initiatives. The United States, for example, has strict regulations, such as the Wolf Amendment, that limit NASA's ability to collaborate with China. These restrictions stem from concerns about technology transfer and national security, as space technology is often dual-use, meaning it can be applied to both civilian and military purposes. As a result, US-China space collaboration is virtually non-existent, despite the two nations leading the world in space science. Russia, once a close partner of NASA, has seen its space cooperation with the West strained by political tensions, particularly after its annexation of Crimea in 2014 and its invasion of Ukraine in 2022. These geopolitical conflicts have led to a cooling of relations, with Russia turning more toward China for space partnerships. Trust issues also pose a challenge to space collaboration. Concerns about intellectual property theft, espionage, and military applications of space technology make some nations hesitant to engage in joint projects. As the space race intensifies, national interests may take precedence over the shared goal of scientific discovery, further complicating international collaboration. The competition between BRICS and Western space powers extends beyond science and technology. It is also a contest for geopolitical influence. Space is increasingly seen as the next frontier for diplomatic and military power, and both blocs are leveraging their space capabilities to enhance their standing on the global stage. Space diplomacy is becoming a key tool for nations seeking to expand their influence. By offering satellite launches, space station access, and scientific partnerships, countries can build alliances and enhance their soft power. China, for example, has made space a central component of its Belt and Road Initiative, promoting space cooperation with countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. This approach not only strengthens China's ties with developing nations, but also helps it gain access to strategic locations for ground-based space infrastructure, such as tracking stations and launch sites. Russia, despite its strained relations with the West, continues to use space diplomacy to maintain its influence. Its long-standing partnership with Kazakhstan, home to the Baikonur Cosmodrome, is one example. Russia also seeks to expand its space ties with countries like India and Brazil, positioning itself as a key player in the BRICS space collaboration. The United States and its allies are also engaging in space diplomacy, with NASA leading efforts to build international coalitions for the Artemis program. The Artemis Accords, signed by over a dozen nations, outline principles for responsible space exploration and seek to establish a framework for peaceful cooperation in space. By bringing together like-minded nations, the United States aims to counterbalance the growing influence of China and Russia in space. While space exploration is often portrayed as a peaceful pursuit, the military applications of space technology cannot be ignored. Satellites play a crucial role in modern military operations, providing capabilities for communication, navigation, surveillance, and missile guidance. As the space race intensifies, the militarization of space, often referred to as the weaponization of space, has become a significant concern. Both BRICS and Western nations are investing heavily in space-based military assets, leading to a potential arms race in space. Several nations have established dedicated military branches for space operations, recognizing the strategic importance of space in national defense. The United States was the first to establish a formal military space branch with the creation of the U.S. Space Force in 2019. Its mission is to protect U.S. interests in space, including safeguarding satellites, ensuring freedom of operation in space, and developing capabilities to deter and defeat space-based threats. China and Russia are also investing in their space militaries. The People's Liberation Army runs China's space activities, ensuring that all space technology is dual-use, available for both civilian and military applications. China's anti-satellite missile tests and the development of space-based weapons demonstrate its commitment to becoming a dominant space military power. Similarly, Russia's space-based military capabilities, including its development of anti-satellite weapons, highlight the growing risk of conflict in space. India, while not formally establishing a space force, created its Defense Space Agency in 2019, tasked with overseeing the military's space operations. India's anti-satellite missile test in the same year underscored its growing interest in space as a military domain. Brazil and South Africa, though not heavily militarized in space, are beginning to incorporate space assets into their national security frameworks, especially in areas like satellite-based surveillance and communication. The development of anti-satellite weapons is one of the most visible signs of the militarization of space. These weapons are designed to disable or destroy satellites, which are critical for modern military and civilian infrastructure. Both China and Russia have conducted successful anti-satellite tests, raising concerns about the vulnerability of satellites and the potential for conflict in space. The United States, India, and even emerging space powers like North Korea have also tested or developed anti-satellite capabilities. The risk of space warfare is becoming more pronounced as nations develop technologies to target not only satellites, but also ground-based infrastructure that supports space operations. This includes cyber attacks on satellite control systems, jamming of satellite communications, and the use of lasers or other directed energy weapons to blind or disable space-based assets. The weaponization of space presents new challenges for international security, as it could lead to a dangerous escalation of hostilities in a domain that is increasingly critical to both civilian life and military strategy. The growing militarization of space is raising questions about the governance of space as a global commons. The 1967 Outer Space Treaty, which prohibits the placement of weapons of mass destruction in space and declares space to be a peaceful domain, is the foundational legal framework for space activities. However, this treaty was drafted in an era when space was primarily the domain of a few superpowers, and it does not fully address the complexities of modern space activities, particularly in the areas of commercial space exploration and military applications. The United States, China, and Russia have all indicated their desire to preserve space for peaceful purposes. Yet the development of military space capabilities suggests that a balance between deterrence and cooperation is becoming harder to maintain. Countries are now faced with the challenge of updating or creating new treaties that can manage space militarization, prevent an arms race, and ensure that space remains accessible to all nations. International cooperation, such as the recent discussions in the United Nations regarding space arms control, has made some progress, but deep geopolitical tensions between BRICS and Western powers make consensus difficult. As space becomes an increasingly contested domain, the challenge will be to balance national security concerns with the need for collaborative governance to prevent space from becoming a battleground. The final frontier of space is not only about exploration and science, it is also about governance and the rules that will shape the future of human activities beyond Earth. As BRICS nations and Western powers pursue their space ambitions, the question of how to manage space as a shared global resource becomes more pressing. Will the future of space be defined by multilateralism and cooperation, or will it be a fractured domain divided by geopolitical interests and competitive agendas? International institutions, such as the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs and the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, play a crucial role in shaping global space policy. These organizations work to promote peaceful exploration, prevent the militarization of space, and ensure that space benefits all of humanity. However, their ability to enforce agreements is limited, and their effectiveness depends on the willingness of major space powers to comply with international norms. The Artemis Accords, led by the United States, are a recent attempt to establish norms for lunar exploration and resource utilization. These accords, signed by a growing number of countries, outline principles for responsible behavior in space, including transparency, peaceful exploration, and the sharing of scientific data. While the accords are an important step toward multilateral governance, China and Russia have criticized them as being too US-centric, reflecting a broader division between BRICS and Western approaches to space governance. One of the most immediate governance challenges is space debris, which poses a significant threat to both manned and unmanned space missions. As more satellites are launched, particularly into low Earth orbit, the risk of collisions increases. Space debris can travel at speeds of up to 28,000 kilometers per hour, making even small pieces of debris potentially catastrophic to spacecraft and satellites. Managing space debris requires international cooperation, as debris generated by one country's activities can affect all spacefaring nations. The United States, Europe, and Japan have been leaders in developing technologies to mitigate space debris, such as spacecraft designed to remove debris from orbit. However, the lack of binding international regulations on space debris management remains a significant gap in space governance. BRICS nations, particularly China and India, which are rapidly expanding their satellite fleets, will need to play an active role in addressing this challenge to ensure the sustainability of space activities. As space becomes more commercialized, with private companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and others playing a major role, the legal frameworks governing space activities will need to evolve. The Outer Space Treaty prohibits the national appropriation of celestial bodies, but it is less clear on the issue of commercial resource extraction. The United States has passed legislation that allows private companies to own resources extracted from space, a move that has been mirrored by Luxembourg and other countries. This legal ambiguity creates the potential for conflict, as countries and companies race to stake their claims on lunar and asteroid resources. BRICS nations, particularly China and India, are also eyeing space resources as a key area for future economic growth. However, without clear international agreements on resource extraction, there is a risk that the competition for these resources could lead to tensions or even conflict. The development of a multilateral framework for space mining, potentially through the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space or other international bodies, will be essential to ensure that space remains a peaceful domain and that its resources are shared equitably. The broader question of multilateralism versus nationalism in space governance reflects the underlying geopolitical dynamics between BRICS and Western space powers. While international cooperation has historically been a cornerstone of space exploration, the growing competition for economic, scientific, and military dominance in space is straining multilateral efforts. Countries may increasingly prioritize national interests over collaborative efforts, particularly as space becomes more commercially viable and strategically important. However, there is also reason for optimism. The complexity and cost of space exploration mean that collaboration is often the most practical approach. The ISS, despite political tensions between the United States and Russia, remains a successful example of international partnership in space. New projects, such as the Lunar Gateway, a planned space station in lunar orbit, are also based on international cooperation with contributions from NASA, ESA, JAXA, and others. The future of space governance will likely be a blend of competition and collaboration, with nations balancing their national interests against the need for international cooperation. As BRICS and Western space powers continue to advance their space agendas, the challenge will be to create governance structures that accommodate both the competitive and cooperative aspects of the new space race. The 21st century space race between BRICS nations and Western space powers is fundamentally different from the Cold War era competition between the United States and the Soviet Union. Today, space exploration is not only a geopolitical contest, but also a platform for scientific collaboration, economic development, and technological innovation. Both blocs are investing heavily in space capabilities, from human spaceflight and Mars exploration to satellite technology and space mining, each seeking to enhance their influence on Earth and beyond. However, this new space race is also an opportunity for unprecedented global scientific collaboration. As space becomes more accessible to nations and private companies, there is immense potential for shared scientific discovery that benefits all of humanity. The challenge will be navigating the tensions between competition and cooperation, ensuring that space remains a peaceful domain and that its benefits are distributed equitably. In the coming decades, the future of space exploration will be shaped by the decisions made by BRICS and Western space powers. Will they prioritize collaboration in pursuit of shared goals, or will the competitive instincts that have historically driven space exploration prevail? As we stand on the threshold of a new era in space, the answer to this question will define not only the future of space, but also the trajectory of global geopolitics in the 21st century.